Leo nataka tusome kuhusu the prophet, that Moses spoken by Moses. From Deuteronomy chapter 18, we'll start there. Deuteronomy chapter 18, ningependa tusome pale. Deuteronomy chapter 18, from verse 15, we look at the prophet spoken by Moses to be able to understand some of the things that are spoken by Paul and things that Jesus spoke, and even how to apply whatever we are reading. Bwana asifiwe. Naamini baada ya somo ya leo pia utakuwa na upana wa kuelewa manabii walizungumza kuhusu nini. We have looked at the subject of the God who spoke through the prophet, right? Yeah, so today I want us to look at the prophet spoken by Moses. Moses was also a prophet, okay? And there is something he spoke about, and that is what I want us to see. So verse 15, nasema, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren. Him you shall hear, according to all you desired of the Lord your God in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, nor let me see his great fire anymore, lest I die. And the Lord said to me, what they have spoken is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And it shall be that whoever will not hear my words, which he speak in my name, I will require it of him. Hallelujah. This is Moses who is speaking. Na kitabu cha Deuteronomy that is Mount Sinai. Okay? And then we have the River Jordan. Jordan River. And from Mount Sinai, wakati walipatiwa the law, to the time they were crossing River Jordan to go to the land of promise, we have 40 years. Okay? So, the story tunasoma is a recap or a recount ya mambo ambayo yalitendeka pale kwa mlima Sinai. You read the account in the book of Exodus, lakini Exodus, Moses hajatuambia this story anatupatia in Deuteronomy. But we know the story when the mountain was quaking, there was smoke, there was earthquake, all those things, trumpet, and God speaking to them audibly. They were afraid. Wakaambia Moses, tafadhali ambia Mungu asiongee na sisi, tutakufa. All right? Then God spoke to Moses. And he told Moses, what they have said is okay. All right? What they have said is okay. They are not able to bear my glory. They are not able to bear my presence. What I'll do, I will raise a prophet. Okay? So, Deuteronomy is being narrated 40 years later. Ukisoma verse 9, the same chapter, Moses anasema, when you come into the land which the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abomination of those nations. Okay? When you come into the land, which the Lord your God is giving you, that means they are on this side of the river Jordan. Hawajavuka kuingia into the land of Canaan, the land that was promised to them. So Moses amezungumziwa na Mungu na ameambiwa, wewe hauingii wapi? Into the land of promise. You will also die in the wilderness. And so he is instructing them not to go against the commandments of God as they did 40 years ago at the mountain, when they rebelled against God and when they chose not to believe God. Bwana asifiwe. So wanaambiwa ya kwamba wakivuka mto, wakiingia katika the land of promise to them, then they shall not learn the ways of the Gentiles. Wasijifunze ibada za Wakikuyu. Yeah? Wasijifunze ibada za Ndorere. Kwa sababu gani? The other nations were not worshiping Jehovah. It is the house of Jacob, the people that were at Mount Sinai, that God made a covenant with them, and he is their God and they were his people. The rest are men or people from other nations worshiping whatever they want to worship. Worshiping under the trees, doing sorcery. You can read the account from verse 9. Consulting the dead, doing witchcraft, divination. Those are the things that the nations on the other side of Jordan practiced. Are you getting this? But they are told, you shall not do those things. You shall not follow their ways. Okay? And then he reminds them what God promised. And I think in the mind of Moses, hakujua when God will raise a prophet. In fact, I don't think he understood what God meant. He's telling them when they cross over into this land, they should not consult the diviners, the dead, the sorcery and all that, because God promised to raise a prophet for them. So according to Moses, he is maybe thinking that God will raise a prophet to them when they get into the land of Canaan. Are you getting it? That's why he is bringing this story. And he says to them, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet. So don't listen to the soothsayer, don't listen to the diviners, don't listen to the sorcerers, don't consult the dead, because God will raise a prophet for you. So he says that the prophet that God promised will come from who? From the Gentile nation. Oh, say from the Gentile nation. He is not from the lowland. The prophet that Moses spoke about, was he coming from Kenya? Where is he coming from? Why do we say he's coming from Israel? Yeah? Because God said, I will raise a prophet like you from your midst, from your brethren. So he was not coming from the Gentile nations. The prophet was coming from the land of Israel, and he was coming from the tribe of Israel. Hello? Hapo tunahitaji roho kuinterpret. So kama Kikuyu kakichomoka kaseme I'm the prophet that Moses spoke about. God said, because they are not willing, they are not able to listen to my voice. They actually said, tell God not to speak to us again. Yeah? And that's where God said to Moses, what they have said is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from their brethren, and I will put my words in his mouth. So kama hawawezi wakanisikia nikizungumza, basi nitawatumia nabii na nitaweka maneno yangu kwa kinywa chake ili aweze kuwanenea. Hallelujah. Unfortunately, I don't know whether they were able to hear. Yeah? Yaani Mungu alikuja na utukufu mwingi wakaogopa. Sema hapana, hii hatuwezi toboa. But God is interested in speaking to us. Isn't it? Isn't it? So he decided to come in a different way. A form that you will be able to bear, to understand, hallelujah. And so there was a prophet that was promised. And he says that whoever shall not hear from him shall be required of him. Now, when you go to John chapter 1, verse 43, so from Mount Sinai to the death of Jesus Christ, the law of Moses was in force. Okay? Jesus was born of a woman under the law to redeem us from the law. Okay? He came to put an end to the law and to begin a totally different dispensation or age. John tells us that the law came with Moses, but grace and truth came with Jesus Christ. That is John chapter 1. So the law came with Moses, But Jesus did not come with the law. Jesus came with grace and truth. Na ni vizuri maybe at this point kusema hivi ya kwamba kando na kumjua yeye as the truth, ni muhimu pia kujua the truth that he came with. Yeah? Kando na kumjua yeye as the truth, you also need to know the truth he came with. Because when you know that truth, then that truth is what will set you free. Are you together? He came with grace and truth. So kuna kitu the truth alikuja amebeba. Inaitwa grace and so tuseme, now I know Jesus. Yeah, it's okay. But there is something he brought. Do you know it? Do you know the truth that he came with? Do you know the grace that he came with? Are you getting me? So John anatuambia hivi, verse 43. Tuko pale? The following day, Jesus went into the sea. Jesus wanted to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Hallelujah. So Philip found Nathanael. So where are we? Are we still in the wilderness? Where are we? Jesus is already born, right? So no. There is a boy that was born in Bethlehem. Katika circumstance hazikueleweka sana, because a young girl said the Holy Spirit, she is pregnant of the Holy Spirit. Naye Joseph akazungumziwa na malaika katika ndoto. Haleluya. Akaambiwa usiogope kuchukua Mary. So the story is between Mary and Joseph. Do you think the community believed? They did. And so Jesus grew like any other person. Yeah, he became a carpenter. But now after 30 years, he got baptized. And he began to do what he came to do. Anybody who knows who he is? Is he prophesying all over? No. He's a carpenter. But Nathanael, after the encounter with Jesus, he said, "We have found him that Moses in the law." That is Philip. Philip said to Nathanael that we have found him whom Moses in the law and the prophet did what? Wrote, Jesus of Nazareth. So Philip ana-acknowledge ya kwamba huyu Yesu, huyu carpenter, yeye ndiye nabii Moses alizungumza kumhusu. So Moses wrote in the law. But then we talked about the Torah. Do you remember the subject? Yeah, the law and the Torah. Yeah? Tukasema Torah is the law, referring to Torah, referring to the books of Moses. Okay? Lakini in English, Torah ni law. And we were able to separate the 10 commandments, which is law, and Torah, which is law, but the books of Moses. So Moses wrote in the law, which is Torah, not the 10 commandments, because there is nowhere Jesus, rather Moses, spoke about Jesus in the 10 commandments. Iko. So usitafute Yesu kwa 10 commandments. Yeah? You know, we have this ideology ya kwamba the things, na ni kwa sababu ya kutoelewa what is the old covenant. Yeah? So we are trying to look at Jesus from everywhere we go in the Bible. Hata ukisoma story ya Goliath na David, bado unatafuta Yesu pale. Pengine ile mawe iliangusha Goliath ni Yesu. Goliath anasimamia shetani, naye David anasimamia Mungu. Not everything will apply to typology and antitype. All right? We need to understand what the law, what Moses spoke about, and what the prophets spoke about. There are things that are only locked in the history. Hello? And they are not for any other purpose. Ni history, and that's it. In the year King Uzziah died, don't look for revelation there. It is history. Hallelujah. Ama mahali Moses aliambiwa azungumzie mawe akaigonga mara mbili, uanze kutafuta ufunuo. So the law and the prophets, we are referring to the Torah and the writings of the prophet, and there are things that were spoken by both Moses and the prophets concerning a prophet. And Philip anasema, we have found him that Moses and the prophet wrote concerning Jesus of Nazareth. Hallelujah. So Jesus, sasa hii story inakuja miaka mingi baadaye. Right? Yesu amezaliwa na amekuwa, and now he's doing things. Are you getting that? But the law is still in force. Jesus was born in the law and operated while the law was still in force. The temple was still standing, the Levitical priesthood was still serving, tithe was still being corrected. Hallelujah. Rituals were still being done. Na wana anaponya mtu, anamwambia ende akatoe dhabihu ambayo imekuwa imeagizwa katika the law of Moses. Why? Because the law was still in force. But now, God had made a promise to speak to the Israelites through a prophet. Mungu alikuwa amefanya ahadi ya kwamba atawazungumzia kupitia kwa nabii. And many prophets came. Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel, Joel, they came. Okay? But they all spoke concerning a prophet that will come, a man that will come. They were not the prophet that Moses spoke about. Even John the Baptist is actually the last prophet in this order of the law. Okay? And Jesus said, among men born of women, there has not risen a prophet greater than John. And we looked at that last time, isn't it? And so John is the last prophet. But John is not the prophet that Moses spoke about. They were told Elijah will come. Okay? And Jesus, talking about John, said that he has already come. Maybe you can check that in Matthew 17. Matthew 17, verse 10. Matthew 17, verse 10. And his disciples asked him, saying, why then do the scribes say that Eraja must come first? Jesus answered and said to them, indeed, Eraja is coming first and will restore all things. Verse 12, but I say to you that Eraja has come already. Okay? And they did not know him, but did to him whatever they wished. Likewise, the Son of Man is also about to suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood that he spoke to them of John the Baptist. So Yesu akaulizwa, na mbona the scribes wanasema ya kwamba Elijah atakuja kwanza? Yesu akasema ni kweli. Elijah atakuja kwanza, ndiye restore all things. Then akasema ya kwamba actually Elijah ashakuja na wakamtendea all that they wanted. You know, they chopped his head. But they didn't know. All right? They didn't know him. That's very interesting. Elijah has come, but they didn't know him. And they did all that they wanted. Now, the Son of Man, referring to who? To himself, is just about to suffer in their hands. And they understood that he was talking about who? John the Baptist. So the story of Elijah coming, he came. When? Before Jesus went to the cross, Elijah had come. And he is not coming again. Hello. The Elijah that was promised to come is John the Baptist who came. And he came in the spirit and in the power of Elijah. God promised through Malachi and said, behold, days are coming, and I will send a prophet in the spirit and in the power of Elijah. He will restore the hearts of the fathers to the sons, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So, they waited for who? For Elijah. Prophesied in Malachi. But Jesus said, Elijah has already come. So are we waiting for Elijah? Yeah? No, we are not waiting for Elijah. Elijah came na story yake ikaisha, akakatwa kichwa. So we should not be fooled that there is another Elijah coming. Hallelujah. Tuko pamoja? Na ni vizuri kusoma Biblia, ndio Biblia ikutafsirie whatever it is saying. Ikisema Elijah inakuja, then si itatuambia ni nani? But when somebody rises and says he is the prophet that was spoken about, kwanza from Deuteronomy, that Moses spoke about a Kenyan prophet. Hawa. Sema kupotea. Kabla hujasikia roho, siusikie maandiko. Maandiko yatakusaidia. Because ukisikiza roho ni nyingi. Sindio? The only way we are able to tell the spirit of God from other spirits is when we stick to what is written. Any spirit that does not agree with what is written is a spirit of error. Bwana asifiwe. And that's why ninasisitiza ya kwamba tukubali tusome Biblia, and we are here so that we can be able to understand how to read it. It's a very simple book to understand. Bora wewe unajua kusoma Kizungu. Kama hujui kusoma Kizungu, kuna Biblia za Kiswahili. Lazima ujue kusoma Kiswahili. Haleluya. Kama hujui kusoma Kiswahili, kuna za Kikuyu na za Kijaruo. Lakini lazima tusome what is written. Na tusome within the context. Sio kamustari. So the story of Eraja coming is a done deal. And the chapter is closed. Jesus said, among men born of women, there has not risen a prophet like John. Yet, this least in my kingdom is greater than John. So, all the prophets that rose, starting with Moses, Elijah, Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel, Habakkuk, Nahum, Awote, there has not risen a prophet superior to John. But you know what? Jesus said, those that are in my kingdom, the least of them is superior to John. Hello. The least in the kingdom of Christ is superior to the most senior prophet under this regime. So why should you look to be like John? Honestly. Why should you look to be like David? Wapendwa, kama aliye pande hii ni mkuu kuliko aliye pande hii, Baba naomba unifanye kama Musa. Musa alitamani kuwa kama wewe. David prayed akasema, oh blessed is that man whom the Lord will forgive, whom the Lord will not keep a record of their sin. Oh blessed is that man. Alafu na wewe unataka kuwa kama David. Si unaona kuna kuchanganyikiwa? David alitamani. The Bible says that prophets of old, they desire to know the time when these things will be, that the Spirit of Christ was speaking through them. They desire to live these days. They desire to know this time. Na wewe uko majira haya na unataka kuishi kana kwamba uko majira haya. Hawa walidumishwa na dhabihu. Wewe haudumishwi na dhabihu. Unadumishwa na Kristo kwenda msalabani. Hello. Every year dhabihu ingetolewa kushughulikia dhambi zao. Every year. Why? There was no forgiveness of sin on this side. Men could only be atoned. Even the man after God's heart Yeah? Baada ya kuambia Mungu I'm very sorry, anatumiwa nabii. Anaambiwa David, umemkosea Mungu sana. Nasema ni kweli, I'm very sorry. Sasa nimetumwa uchague mambo mangapi? Matatu. Either kuwe na ukame miaka 3, ama uanguke kwa mikono ya adui wako miezi 3, ama ushughulikiwe na Mungu siku 3. Unaona kama kuna option ya 4 ya kusamehewa? Yeah? Kuna option ya 4 ya kusamehewa. Na hapo ndipo David akasema afadhali kuanguka kwa mikono ya Bwana. Alafu usikie watu ambao wanasoma mistari wakisema tujipeleke kwa mikono ya Bwana. David hakuwa anaanguka kwa mikono ya Bwana kubarikiwa. Nakumbuka vile mama angeingisha mikono na huku kwa thighs. Yeah? Hiyo ndio kuanguka kwa mikono ya Bwana. Yeah? Unashughulikiwa pole pole. Wakati David alisema afadhali the third choice, kuanguka kwa mikono ya Bwana kwa sababu ni wa rehema nyingi. How many people died? 70,000 men died. Now what stopped the death was the atonement, the blood sacrifice that was given by the Lord for atonement. David akajua the only way to stop this is to shed blood. Alafu sisi ambao tunaishi wakati Mungu mwenyewe ametoa mwanakondoo wake, amefanya dhabihu ya once and for all, tunataka kuishi kwa dhabihu. Do we have the understanding? Yeah, what happened? Who is this man? Who is this prophet that was coming? Sina kuna mali tunapigiwa chenga. So, we do not have any other prophet coming. The prophet that was to come was John, and the prophet that Moses spoke about, Philip anasema, he is Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph, the carpenter. Hallelujah. Let's go to Acts chapter 3. Sorry. Acts chapter 3. We have the account of Peter preaching. Na wale ambao wanafikiria kwamba kuna injili ya Jews ambao ni tofauti na injili ya Gentiles, they need to think twice. We only need to look into the Bible and see what Peter preached. Hello? Yes. Peter preached the same gospel that Paul preached. And we'll look at that in a minute. So verse 22. Let me read from verse 17 for the sake of context, isn't it? We know the story ni after ameponya kiwete na people were surprised, they gazed at him. Anaambia, guys, mnatuangalia kana kwamba ni sisi tumemponya. Yeah? This man stands and he walks because of Jesus Christ. Okay? And he got the opportunity to preach to them. Verse 17 anasema, Yet now, brethren, I know that you did it in ignorance, as did also your fathers, your rulers. But those things which God foretold by the mouth of all his prophets, that Christ would suffer, he has thus fulfilled. Hebu tuangalie hiyo kidogo. This is Peter. What is he saying? That by killing Jesus, you did it in ignorance, together with your rulers. Okay? And he says, but those things that God foretold, what is to foretell? What is to foretell? Huh? Something that will happen. What is to foretell? Yeah? Kitu yenye imesemwa. Karibu. What is to foretell?
For is before.
For is before. This is before. Before what? Before it happens. So, to foretell is to tell something before it happens. Are you getting this? So, who foretold, by the way? But those things which God foretold. So, is it a man who foretold? Yeah? When Isaiah spoke, who spoke? God. We looked at Malachi and we saw the God that spoke through the prophets. That's why when they spoke whatever they said, they concluded by saying, thus says the Lord. Why? Whatever they were saying, they were not the author. They didn't speak their mind. They were inspired to say what they said. They spoke as they were moved by the Holy Spirit. They did not organize in their mind what to say. And that is the character of scriptures. Alright? The intention of saying, the intention of writing was not within them. They didn't even understand whatever they were saying. Why? Because it is God who spoke through them. Are you getting this? So God told things that will happen before time or before they happened. And he continues to say, he spoke that by the mouth of all his prophet. Any prophet that would rise in the land but has not spoken concerning the time that is to come is irrelevant. Chanirudie tena. Nabii yeyote ambaye angeinuka in the land na awe anazungumza, lakini maneno anayoyazungumza hayahusiani na Kristo na mambo ambayo yatatendeka when the time comes, that prophet is irrelevant. And it is the criteria to know who is the true prophet and who is not the true prophet. That was before. Now that's why Peter anasema in 2 Peter that in those days there were false prophets. Okay? when the prophets were speaking, they were also false prophets. Just like there will be false teachers. That's what Peter says. So tunajua ya kwamba during this time there were false prophets. How could you tell who is the true prophet? Because all the true prophet carried a messianic prophecy. They foretold something that will happen or be fulfilled in the life of none other but the prophet that Moses spoke about. Very simple way to tell who is who, isn't it? Either we have a historical account relevant to the story of the path of the seed. Do you remember the journey of the seed? Or we have the prophetic writing. Any other thing is irrelevant. Hallelujah. Kuna watu ambao uliza kwa nini hatuna vitabu zingine kwa Biblia. It's a very simple method to tell which book needs to be taken as scripture and which one needs to be thrown out. So these things that God foretold through the mouth of the prophet is that Christ would suffer. And that Peter is saying that God has fulfilled it. All right? Repent, therefore, and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out, so that the time of refreshment may come from the presence of the Lord, and that he may send Jesus Christ, who was preached to you before, whom heaven must receive, until the time of restoration of all things, which God has spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. Verse 22, For Moses truly said to the fathers, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your brethren. Him you shall hear in all things. Whatever he says to you, and it shall be that every soul who will not hear that prophet shall be utterly destroyed from among the people. Yes, and all the prophets from Samuel and those who follow, as many as have spoken, have also foretold these days. You are the sons of the prophets and of the covenant which God made with our father, saying to Abraham, and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. To you first, God has raised up his servant Jesus, sent him to bless you, in turning away every one of you from your iniquity. So Peter is saying that there were things that the prophets foretold. From Moses, Samuel, and all the prophets that followed, they all spoke about things that was to come. And they confirm even the words that God spoke through Moses. And we see the repeat of the book of Deuteronomy, isn't it? Where God promised. Now, question. Whom does Peter acknowledge to be the prophet that God spoke to Moses about? Yeah? Who is the prophet? Yeah? Jesus, isn't it? si ndio? And God has actually fulfilled this by raising Jesus from the dead. Wacha turudi nyuma kidogo, because we get more details here. From Daniel, from Deuteronomy, God told Moses, I will send a prophet. I will raise a prophet from among them, whom you shall hear. I will put my words into his mouth. All right? And whoever shall not hear, I will require it from him. In other words, you will be accountable for the words that he will speak. All right? Are you getting me? And Peter is saying, he is recounting those words. You can see there in quotation marks. The Lord your God will raise up a prophet like me from your brethren. Him you shall hear in all things. And it shall be that every soul that will not hear that prophet. Which prophet? Yeah? Yeah? Do you see why people are so fooled to follow a man? They are told that if you don't obey that prophet, you shall utterly be destroyed. Are we talking about a Kenyan prophet? No. Yeah? Hello? And people are stuck so foolishly, to things that don't make sense, because they are afraid, if I don't hear this prophet, I will surely be put to death. Wewe unaona Peter hapa kama anaongea kuhusu Mkenya? Anaongea kuhusu nani? Yesu. Jesus is the prophet that God said, whoever shall not hear him, any soul that will not hear that prophet will utterly be destroyed. And the writer of Hebrews, in Hebrews chapter 1, he says in the past, we can have a look at that before we proceed. Hebrews chapter 1. Hebrews chapter 1 from verse 1. God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in time past to who? To the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by his Son. Can you see that? So, in these days, God spoke at various times and in various ways through the prophets. A prophet would rise, and God would tell the prophet to remove his garments and walk naked in the streets. Hello? God spoke at various times in various ways through the prophet. He would tell Jeremiah to make a yoke and put it on his neck and walk around in the streets. That is how God would speak. So today, he is not speaking to us in that way. Hello? So if someone rises na avae magunia, haleluya, na aseme ni nabii wa Bwana, anatoa unabii, kwa sababu unaelewa kenye unaelewa leo, unajua ni kasoro tu kidogo. kidogo, isn't it? Huh? Because God is no longer speaking to men the way he spoke on this side. All the prophets that existed before the coming of the prophet, they spoke to the people concerning the events, but they also foretold the things that would happen. Are we together? Now, those things they foretold have been fulfilled in the person of the prophet who came, who is Jesus Christ. So we do not have any other predictions. Are you getting it? Because from the day God created Adam, all the prophets spoke concerning the time that was to come, and that time came. That's why we even have in Jude, he says that Enoch was the seventh man and he prophesied. The seventh man in humanity also prophesied. What did he prophesy about? He didn't prophesy about Methuselah. Yeah? He didn't prophesy about Abraham. He prophesied about the Lord returning with his saints. So it's all about who? Christ. Now after Christ has come, we are now living in the good news. And the good news is this, that all that God promised has thus been fulfilled. Is there a difference between the prophets in the truth and grace and the prophets in the law? Yes. The prophets in the law spoke about the coming of Christ and the graces that would follow, and the glory and the salvation that would come through his death. So what are the prophets here telling us? About the Holocaust. Huh? What are they supposed to be telling us? They are supposed to be affirming what he did. Hello? Not to tell us about the Holocaust and who will be the next president. What difference does it make for your life anyway? Ukijua the next president wa America halafu? Yeah? Na mwingine alikuwa ananiambia, alikuwa anatolewa unabii, anaambiwa una vikombe za green kwa nyumba. Si wewe unajua hivyo? Yeah? Why should you tell me what I know in the name of the Lord? Help my faith to believe and to put my trust in him. Isn't it? And the way we love prophecy. Ati mtumishi wa Bwana, what is the Lord saying about me? Read the Bible. The Bible is saying you are blessed in Christ. Believe that. You are forgiven because you have believed. Amen here. You have been transferred from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of his son. So you're not a kingdom seeker. Believe that. Hello? Lakini kutafuta ati nabii anasema nini? Ndio kwambia nasikia Bwana anasema kuna njogoo yako moja. The prophets after the death of Christ, they are only coming to help the believers to grow in the faith. They are encouragers. That's the ministry of prophets. And in any case, a prophet in the church is an organ in the body. But the prophets in the old were not organs in the body. They were individuals God raised so that he can speak through them concerning the times we are living in. Kujua who will be the president in America or who will be the next president in Kenya, it makes no difference anyway. Ama namna gani, my brother? Maombi ya 40 days, 80 days, sijui ati Mungu atupatie a president. Ni upi ameingia mumekosa kulia? So kuna ujinga mwingi sana. Instead of praying for souls to be converted, people to come to the Lord, we are praying for things that don't matter. He says, we are back to Acts chapter 3. Mali tulikuwa tunaona Peter akihubiri, and he's talking about, he mentions the prophecy of Moses, isn't it? So pale chini anasema verse 26, to you first, God having raised up his servant Jesus, has sent him to do what? To bless you in turning away every one of you from your iniquity. So the blessing that you can get is being turned from crookedness. Watu kutoka kwa crookedness ya maisha, sio kwa sababu ya kuwaombea. Hapana, ni kuambia wa muamini nani? Wa muamini Kristo. That is the blessing. Jesus came to bless you, not to give you a car. Yeah? Jesus came to bless you, not to give you a house or a husband, but to turn you from crookedness. The crookedness of life. Mtu akisikia ameshikwa na karoho ka unabii, ndio at least avutie watu, anawaambilia hizi vitu. Nani alikwambia baraka ni vitu? Nasikia Bwana anasema kuna mtu hapa unaenda Amerika. Ati kwenda Amerika ni kubarikiwa. Kununua gari mtumba imetumiwa na Mchinese for 5 years. Ati ni baraka. Na unaipeleka kanisa kudedicatiwa. God sent his son to bless you. Amen. To turn you from iniquity, isn't it? So you can see Peter is pointing people to who? To the same prophet. Are you getting me? God is speaking to us in these last days through his son. And whoever shall not hear that prophet, God promised he will utterly be. And when Jesus came, he said to men, guys, if I had not come, you would be without sin. But now that I have come, you are in sin. You have no excuse. Why? You have not believed in me. Hamungekuwa na dhambi ama hamungekuwa held accountable kama singekuja. But now that I have showed up, whoever does not believe in me is in sin. And he said, when I go, I'm going to send another one, the Holy Spirit of truth. What will he do? He will testify of me. Hello? The Holy Spirit will not come to tell you about himself. Munapinga roho, munapinga roho. Roho ambaye Kristo alikuwa na mtuma hakuwa nakuja kujiongelea. Alikuwa nakuja kuongelea kuhusu nani? Kuhusu huyu nabii. Yeah? Na roho wengine ni marketers wa watumishi. Bwana anasema muheshimu mtumishi wa Bwana. The Spirit of Christ was not coming to market any man. He was coming to talk about who? Jesus said that he will not talk of himself. He will speak what is mine. He will testify of me. And by the way, he will give you power to testify of me. Akija juu yako, atakupatia uwezo, atakupatia nguvu za kunishuhudia mimi. Are you getting me? And he will convict men of sin. Which sin? Yeah? Roho anasema Joroge alikunywa pombe jana. Uko na roho mwitu. Roho wa Kristo anakuja convict men of the sin of not believing the Son of God. Because if you do not believe the prophet that was spoken by Moses, you are in sin and you will perish. John writing in John chapter 3, he says, actually it is Jesus speaking. Says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Okay? So whoever does not believe in him is condemned already. Anyone that has not believed in Jesus, the prophet that was spoken about, will not be condemned. He's condemned already. What is the condemnation? John says that the light has come into the world, but men have loved darkness. He is the light of the world. If you have not believed in him, then you're in love with darkness. And that is your condemnation. Your refusal to believe in him is your judgment. Yeah? Haijalishi hata kama uko na jina kama yake yenye imemkaribia. Kuna Christopher, kuna Christine, kuna wengine wanaitwa Emmanuel, hallelujah. Christian, praise the name of Jesus. It doesn't matter. If you as an individual will not put your trust in the prophet that was spoken about, believe me, you will perish. And you are already condemned. You're not waiting for judgment. John says that, actually Jesus is saying, whoever hears my word and believes in him who sent me has eternal life. He shall not come into judgment. Why? Because he has passed from death. It's all about who? The prophet Moses spoke about. If you do not hear him, if you do not believe in him, God promised long time ago that whoever shall not hear him shall perish. And that time came, the prophet came. Hallelujah. And people still want to follow Moses. And the prophet has come. Yeah? You will not be condemned because of the law of Moses. Are you getting this? Before the prophet came, the law of Moses was in force, and men were judged, men were condemned for not believing, or rather for not obeying the law of Moses. Are you together? But after the prophet has come, the standard of judgment has changed. It is about him and the word that he has given. Hallelujah. So if we will not hear him, wapendwa, haijalishi tunasoma theolojia gani, message ni moja: believe in him. Believe in him, he is the prophet. Na tusidanganyike ya kwamba kuna nabii mwingine. Kama kuna nabii ni aliye katika mwili wa Kristo, kama vile tuko na waalimu, tuko na wainjilisti, tuko na wachungaji, tuko na mitume. They are organs in the body of Christ for one single purpose: to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. Not to tell us about locusts and earthquakes. The fivefold ministries is for the purpose of equipping the believers so that the believers can do the work of the ministry. Who are the ministers? Who are the ministers? Yeah? You or me? Yeah? Are you sure? The way you are saying it. Jesus gave these offices as a gift to the church so that the saints can be built up. All right? The saints can be equipped for the work of the ministry, and that we may all be brought into the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God. That is the purpose of any ministry that is in the church of Jesus Christ. Anything else ni story na uko nje. Kama ile mwito uko nayo sio ya kujenga Wakristo ndio wafanye kazi ya huduma. Yeah? Sia wengine wanaambiwa kazi yangu ni ya kuwaombea na nyinyi mfanye biashara mkileta fungu la 10. Huh? That's not the case. Jesus said, "And those who believe in me, these signs shall follow them. In my name, they shall cast out." Do you believe? They shall do what? Cast out devils, heal the sick, raise the dead. Anyone who believes in Jesus becomes an ambassador of Christ here. We are God's representatives. We are the priesthood of God. Everyone who believes. And that's why you need to be equipped so that you can do the work of the ministry. Now the work of the ministry si kufagia masinagogi. The work of the ministry si kuwa watchman wa magari. The work of the ministry sio kupanga watu kwa viti. Hallelujah. The work of the ministry is edifying the souls of men, turning men to Jesus Christ and building them in the faith. That is the ministry. Bwana asifiwe. Kisoma the book of Acts, tunaona the two ministries, the ministry of tables and the ministry of the word and prayer. The ministry of tables inakuja kwa sababu tuko kwa mwili. Watu wanahitaji kukula, watu wanahitaji kukaa chini, watu wanahitaji all those things. But ile huduma inabadilisha maisha ya watu, ile huduma inaokoa nafsi, ile huduma ambayo ni ya Kristo ni bringing the souls to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. The Bible says that grace, the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. Itafikia watu namna gani when you communicate the gospel of grace? When you communicate the gospel of grace, then the grace that brings salvation will come to men. So whether you are an usher like Stephen, yeah, you should not be stoned for ushering. You should be stoned for performing miracles and preaching the gospel. That's why Stephen died. He didn't die kwa sababu ya kugawa chakula. Si alikuwa asha? Ni asha ama ni chef? Which is which? You know the story of Stephen? Ni shida gani ilikuwa? Watu walilalamika kwamba wake zao hawapati chakula ya kutosha. So kinapita akasema chagueni watu ambao watashughulikia hiyo hitaji. And Stephen was picked to do what? Not to prophesy, but to supervise vile chakula zinagawa. Lakini alipigwa mawe kwa sababu gani? Kwa sababu ya the work of the ministry. Bwana asifiwe. Are you getting this? So we need to turn men to this man, the one who died. Not to turn men to ourselves. Yeah? Ministry of turning men to be your servants. Wafanye hard labor na kule nje, wafanye madeals, wakileta pesa na mimi nanunua Prado. Unaonaje? Wafunge 40 days, 80 days, alafu wakusanye ile yote walijinyima wanilete. That is turning men to be your slaves. Christ didn't come to make anyone a slave of anyone. He came to turn men to himself, for he is the Savior. And the gospel of Jesus Christ, the gospel of grace, the good news is turning men to who? To him. That's why Peter anawaambia, jameni, you did this in ignorance. But God has sent that prophet to you to bless you. Hallelujah. Is it becoming clear? Let's go to Acts chapter 26. So Acts 26 from verse 19. Therefore, King Agrippa, I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision, but declared first to those in Damascus and in Jerusalem and throughout all the region of Judea, and then to the Gentiles, that they should repent, turn to God, and do the works befitting repentance. Verse 21. For this reason, which reason? Which reason? The reason of preaching or being obedient to the vision, isn't it? Yeah? Preaching to those that are in Damascus and those that are in Jerusalem, in Judea. That reason, telling men to turn to God. For this reason, the Jews seized me in the temple and tried to kill me. Therefore, having obtained help from God, to this day I stand, witnessing both to the small and great, saying no other thing than those which the prophet and Moses said would come, that the Christ would suffer, that he would be the first to rise from the dead, and would proclaim light to the Jewish people and to the Gentiles. Ngependa tuisome na NIV from verse 22. But God has helped me to this very day, so I stand here and testify to the small and great alike. I am saying nothing beyond what the prophet and Moses said would happen. Can you see that? So Paul anasema hivi ya kwamba hasemi lolote nje ya kile Musa na manabii wali. So what is the gospel? Yeah? If I preach anything that is not in consistency with what Moses and the prophets spoke about, am I in truth or in error? I'm in error. Our faith is founded on the prophets and the testimony of the apostles. The apostles testified to us that he rose from the dead. They are eyewitnesses. But the rising from the dead is in accordance to what the scripture had said. Are we together? So the good news is entrenched in what Moses and the prophet spoke about. Sio story mpya tunatunga. By the way, if you eliminate all the writings from Moses to Malachi, any message that has been preached after the resurrection of Jesus is a story ya Abunuasi. Tarudia tena. Tukiondoa the scriptures, that is the writings of Moses and the prophets, which is Genesis to Revelation, to Malachi, right? This is what we call the law and the prophets, or Moses and the prophets. Yeah, of course, Psalms is also there. David is also a prophet. Yeah, tumeona Samuel, but we don't have the book of Samuel, do we? Huh? Yes, we do. But we don't have him as a prophet. We have the history. Okay, so the books of Moses and the prophets, they all spoke about the Christ. So if we eliminate the law and the prophets, then any message, any writing after the resurrection of Jesus is a story that has no foundation, that has no basis. Ujumbe wa msalaba ni hekaya ya abunuasi. Kama hatutaweza kupata msingi wake katika Musa na manabii. If you remove the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation ni hekaya tu. It has no foundation, because all that was said about Jesus after his appearing on earth is supported by what the prophet spoke about. I don't know whether you're getting this. And that is the simplest way to verify what is true and what is error. Yeah? That's why we need to understand and to study the scriptures, as Paul was telling Timothy. Study. Unfortunately, the same letter that Paul wrote to Timothy to tell him to study the scriptures is the letter we study. Ziko umeshika hapo. Paul anaandika barua akiandikia Timotheo, akimwambia Timotheo, my son, study the scriptures. You have known scriptures from your youth. And then we think Paul was telling Timothy to study the letter to Timothy. You need to be familiar with the scriptures. When the Ethiopian eunuch asked Philip, who is this prophet talking about? Referring to prophet Isaiah. The Bible says that Philip, starting from that verse, that portion he had read, he preached what? He preached Christ. Why? Because Isaiah was talking about who? Any message that does not take you to Christ but takes you to your pocket, wachana nayo. Philip understood the scriptures, and when he read the book of Isaiah, he preached to the Ethiopian eunuch, not about Isaiah. Yeah? He preached Christ. And the Ethiopian eunuch akasema, ni nini itanizuilia nibatizwe? Akaambiwa, you can be baptized if you believe with all your heart. Akasema, I believe. What did he believe? That he is the one. Na ndio John akiandika John chapter 20 verse 30 anasema kuna mambo mengi Yesu alifanya na akafundisha ambayo si kuandika, lakini yale ambayo niliandika ndio uamini ya kwamba Jesus is the Christ. Not believe Jesus Christ, but believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. And when you believe that, you get eternal life. Hallelujah. So tunaona Paul anasema ya kwamba that but God has helped me to this very day, so I stand here and testify to small and great alike. I am saying nothing beyond what the prophets and Moses said would happen. Can you see that? By the way, Paul is not saying what happened. There were things that the prophet would speak in the land that were happening that time. Okay? But Paul is focusing on what the prophet said would come to happen. Not what happened. If Jabezi prayed apanuliwe mipaka, that is what happened to him. It was not a promise of what would happen. So don't tell us about Jabezi. Yeah? If David killed Goliath with a stone, that is a historical event. That is what happened. It was not a promise of what will happen. True? But God said, days are coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant, and I will forgive, and I will remember their sins no more. That is not what happened. That is what was to happen. Tell me about that. God promised through Jeremiah that this proverb shall cease to exist in those days. It is in Jeremiah 31 and Ezekiel. Okay? That the fathers have eaten the sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. No more shall children suffer for the sins committed by their great grandfathers and their mothers. God promised. So that did not happen. It was foretold it will happen. Tell me about that. Hello? Usiniambie kuhusu David na nyanya yake Rahab, kwa sababu hiyo ili happen. Tuambie what the prophet said would come to happen, isn't it? That's what we need. Sijui Ahab alivaa magunia, so nivae magunia. Was that promised to happen? But God promised to bless you. He told Abraham, in your seed, referring to Christ, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So God had foretold. The prophet had said it will happen. Good news. It has happened. The seed of Abraham has come. And so the blessing that God promised is here with us. Are you getting me? So don't tell me to offer a sacrifice like who? Like Abraham. That happened. That was not a promise to happen. Are you getting me? If Abraham tithed, that was an event. It happened. It was not a promise. Are you getting this? So Paul anasema ya kwamba I am testifying to the great and small alike, and I am saying nothing beyond what the prophet and Moses said would happen. Okay? That the Messiah would suffer, and as the first to rise from the dead, would bring the message of light to his own people and to who? Gentiles. So Jesus was not coming to the Jews or for the Jews. He was coming for both the Jews and all the families of the earth. And the message for the Jews and the message for the Gentile is one. He is the message. It is the message of light. Bwana asifiwe. Sijui kama inaeleweka. Can we go to Acts 28 ndio tumalize? Acts 28. Acts 28, Paul is in Rome. He is in his last days. Baada ya kuwa katika kikao na King Agrippa na akaona kuna mpango ya Wayahudi kumuua, he appealed to the highest authority in Rome, to Caesar. And when he appealed to Caesar, then there is no other court that would have listened to his issue. He had to be taken to Rome. Okay? And then he is taken to Rome, and the journey was rough. You know the story. Kwenye walikuwa wanapoteza their boat. But finally he landed in Rome. Now in Rome, he was given his own house to live in, and the soldier allowed visitors to visit Paul. So now he called for the elders of Israel in Rome, the elders of the Jews in Rome. And that's where the story we are reading, Acts 28. Acts 28, I want to read from, let me pick it from verse 17. And it came to pass, after 3 days, that Paul called for the leaders of the Jews together. So when they had come together, he said to them, Men and brethren, though I have done nothing against our people or the custom of our fathers, yet I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans, who, when they had examined me, wanted to let me go, but because there was no cause to put me to death. But when the Jews spoke against it, I was compelled to appeal to Caesar. Not that I had anything of which to accuse my nation. Not that I had anything of which to accuse my nation. For this reason, therefore, I have called you to see you and speak with you, because for the hope of Israel I am bound with these chains. Now listen to this, verse 21. Then they said to him, We have neither received letters from Judea concerning you, nor have any of the brethren who came reported or spoken any evil of you. Okay, who is speaking? Who is speaking? The elders. They are telling Paul, well, we have not received any letter from Judea or Jerusalem about you, and there is nobody who has come from there and spoken anything or any evil about you. Verse 22. Please read. But we desire to hear from you what you think, for concerning this sect, we know that it has been spoken against everywhere. Question, which sect are the Jewish readers interested in knowing Paul's opinion? Which is this sect? Huh? Verse 22. NIV nasema, but we want to hear what your views are, for we know that people everywhere are talking against this sect. Ni sect gani hii? This is Acts 28, verse 22. And there is a sect there that the Jewish readers are interested to get Paul's opinion about. Hakuna kitu mbaya tumesikia kuhusu kutoka Jerusalem, lakini tuko hapa tujue wewe unafikiria nini kuhusu hii sect, kwa sababu haijaongelewa vizuri everywhere. Which is this sect? Yeah? About Christ. Did you say about Christ? Paul alikuwa wa hiyo sect? Huh? Now, this sect is the reason why Paul is in chain. He is in chain because he is not preaching the law and the custom of Moses. He is not preaching the 10 commandments and the custom of Moses, circumcision and the others, as a way of justification. He is now preaching that everyone should hear the prophet. For you to be right with God, you don't need the law. You need to believe in Jesus Christ. And that's why Paul is being persecuted everywhere, persecuted in Damascus, persecuted in Jerusalem, persecuted in Antioch. In Antioch he was, is it Antioch or Rystria, in Galatia? He was beaten and left for the dead. In fact, he was dragged out of the city as one who is dead. And now he is in Rome, in chains. Men and brethren, I have nothing against my nation. I'm only here because they plotted to kill me, so I actually appealed to Caesar. That's why I'm here. But I have called you so that I may see you and I may hear from you. And they said, yeah, actually, we have nothing against you. We have not received any report about you. But there is this sect. We want to hear your opinion. Because this sect is not spoken very well. Not here, but everywhere. So we already have the report about this sect. A bad report. Hallelujah. Which sect do you belong to? The sect of those Jews or the sect that Paul belonged to? Yeah? The sect that Paul belonged to. So if it was not spoken well in the days of Paul, you expect it to be spoken well today. Either you are for this, either you are in this sect or you are against it. And know this, that even the days of Paul, this sect was not spoken well about. What was the content of the sect? What was the foundation of the sect? Salvation through the prophet that was promised. Saying nothing beyond what the prophet promised would happen, not what the prophets did. Hello? If they never said that there will be tithing, I say nothing beyond that. Hello? Paul said, I did not say anything beyond what the prophet said would come to happen. And the story is about Christ. So he says, but we desire to hear, that is verse 22, but we desire to hear what you think, for concerning this sect, we know that it is spoken against everywhere. So when they had appointed him a day, many came to him at his lodging, to whom he explained and solemnly testified of the kingdom of God, persuading them concerning who? Jesus, from both the law of Moses, okay, and the prophets. Can you see that? So Paul is persuading men concerning Jesus from both the law and the prophets. From morning till evening. And some were persuaded by the things which were spoken, and some disbelieved. So when they had not, when they did not agree among themselves, they departed after Paul had said one word. The Holy Spirit spoke rightly through Isaiah, the prophet, to our father, saying, "Go to these people and say, hearing you will hear and shall not understand." Wakati aliongea hiyo maneno wakamwacha. Kwa sababu gani? They are not believing. Some believed, some did not believe. But what message did Paul preach to them? Yeah? What did Paul preach to these people? He preached to them Jesus Christ from the law and the prophets. All right? So the gospel of Jesus Christ, or the gospel of grace, is the message about what the law and the prophets spoke would come to happen. Okay? Peter anasema concerning this salvation. Yeah, maybe you can read that. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 10. Of this salvation, the prophets have inquired and searched carefully, who prophesied or who foretold of what? The grace. So, of this salvation, the prophets inquired and searched carefully, who prophesied of the grace that would come to you, searching what manner of time the Spirit of Christ who was in them was indicating when he testified beforehand, or before time, the sufferings of Christ and what? And the glories that would follow. Okay? To them, it was revealed, or they were told. Not to themselves, but to us, they were ministering the things which now have been reported to you through those who have preached the gospel to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, things which angels desire to look into. Can you see that? So that means the sufferings of Christ concerning the salvation and the grace and the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow is the report contained in the gospel. Kama injili tunayohubiri haibebi hizi vitu, haibebi kuhusu wokovu neema na utukufu ulikuwa unakuja juu yetu kwa sababu ya kuteswa na kufa kwa Yesu, then sio injili. There are good stories in the Bible. Bwana asifiwe. Is it clear? The message, which we call the good news, is a report that all that the prophets spoke about has been fulfilled. When Jesus was speaking to the disciples, two disciples on their way to Emmaus, in Luke chapter 24, yeah? Luke 24. Verse 25, he says to them, O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets has spoken. Ought Christ not to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory? Verse 27. Can you read? So Jesus is asking he's telling the two disciples who have left Jerusalem because of the report of what has happened. They don't believe that he has risen. Okay? They are disappointed that Jesus was the one who they thought would save the Israelites, but now he is dead. And he said, O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe in all that the prophets have spoken. And he asked them, ought Christ not to have suffered these things before coming to his glory? And beginning from Moses and all the prophets, Jesus expounded to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Hallelujah. Verse 44. By the way, after he spoke to them and revealed himself to them, they returned to Jerusalem. As they were narrating the event to the other disciples in Jerusalem, Jesus showed up. And he said to them, verse 44, these are the things which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses or Torah, and the prophets, and the Psalms concerning me. And he opened their understanding that they might comprehend the scriptures. If there is anything the church needs today, is the opening of the eyes, opening of their understanding, so that we can understand the scriptures, so that we can understand the law and the Torah and the prophet, and be able to understand what Christ was foretold to do and to accomplish. Amen.